These are the confessions of a Rugby Fixer. I am the Rugby Fixer. Rugby fixed me, or almost. And so I try to share the wisdom of what I've learned the hard way, and usually by failing, from a life as a fixer back into rugby, as coach, consultant, as commentator, all-around thinker. I tried not to sharpen my mind by narrowing it. I tried to broaden it and still find that edge to win. Lately, there's been discussion about the ability to invest into rugby through private capital and the push and pull at the final hurdle, renegotiating, withdrawing, sweetening the pot. Saru is engaging on trying to make South African rugby punch at its weight, not even above, just at. Most expensive team, more valuable teams, the market value in internationals, because it's a difficult thing to compare a Springbok brand to, say, the Seattle Supersonics, which then became the Oklahoma City Thunder, which the Ackerley group, Old Man Ackerley, was able to take from about the same value as Springboks, all the way up to $3 billion. The market value of a team is, say, like in international soccer, is England's the most valuable. Did they win any World Cups? They won one. It's not about who wins the World Cups. Springboks got that nailed down. It's not about the quality of the pool, the player pool. It's about being in the boardroom and punching above your weight. I would say that some of these new law variation proposals show that New Zealand, backed by capital now, is pushing in there. The French are going to be a hard target because they're against the addition of an orange card where you can be replaced. Still a red card on top of that. But you see what it means if you have capital. Not just social capital or moral capital or the ability to shame someone, but I mean, you just have the money. We find ourselves sometimes in rugby comparing ourselves to other sports, but we're broke. We're broke. And when you're broke, you have to make deals, and you have to bluff sometimes. But you can never let the perfect become the enemy of the good, and you have to take the deal that's on offer. I was told many a time when I was young by an old man that I was learning rugby from, I can't make you do the right thing, but I can make you wish you had. Whew. That was a dangerous saying. I use that all the time now, by the way. We compare something that's on the table when there's nothing else on the table to some perfect, optimum, utopian deal that could exist down the line. And in the meantime, our competitors get the money, make the deals, and shove it down our throat. And so then sometimes we go back 10 years later, 15 years later, and we go, I wish I'd made that deal. Because the truth is, if you arm someone with the upside, and they have the upside to take Springbok to $1 billion US dollars in value, and they're going to get 20% of that cut, and we're going to get 80%. That's a lot better than having 100% of 75 million. So I do think we have to curtail some of these. Like, I want to see a perfect commercial deal before I make one, because who's to say the next commercial deal on the table is going to be better? And once the capital runs its way through the course of the different unions, and understand right now Wales has a higher market brand value than Springboks do, you have to say to yourself, in the meantime, what could I have done with that money? So, I'm a fixer, and before I was paid to be a fixer, I kind of dabbled in this idea of putting myself into unfortunate situations on purpose because I like to think my way through it. I found myself as a young man, I had gotten some money from playing rugby, and I wanted to take a sabbatical. I wanted to go into the nether regions. I wanted to cross the border of Mexico and just walk in there with the clothes on my back and see what I could make of myself. I was tired of the drama of models that I'd been dating. And I wanted to seek solace in the clear blue sky and places where compasses didn't work. They actually go backward, in those canyons. So I walked across the border. You can just wade across at a place called Boquillas del Carmen. And then there's a big canyon called Boquillas. I waved off the burro guy and said, I don't need a donkey. I just walk across. And I had on me just some boots, desert boots. I was wearing some khaki pants and wasn't even wearing a shirt. And I had a sheepskin coat. And I walked across and I decided I'm just going to walk into Chihuahua, Mexico, and maybe to Sonora, maybe parts unknown, and just drift. And I had the knowledge that, at any point in time I could get back across and get to my stash in my car and go back, get to New York, and then from then to London and rejoin a life that was sort of under the table money for rugby. I was playing a bit in France, I was playing a bit in Argentina, Uruguay. So I went over, and the first place I came to was a small little town on a hill. There were only 3 or 4 structures. One was a bar. There was an obscene statue in there of a holy figure. There was federales in literal tanks, like fortified vehicles. And there were just kids trying to sell you rocks and stuff. And there was a guy who had some pretty cool stuff, a whip, a knife. So I traded my coat, because even though it was cold, it was sunny. I traded my coat for just a simple kind of a hoodie made of like wool, and a knife and a whip, and a breakfast with some beer. So I felt like the king of the world, wolfing down my tamales with the hot sauce. Got my beautiful new knife stuck into my pants, and I had a whip that I just strung around my neck, and I felt like the shit. I walked into the next part of Mexico, which becomes just literally off the map. Even now, if you would try to look at this series of events, you would find huge gaps in Google Map. And so I walked into the desert, which became difficult to trudge through. And then, like a flash from behind me, got hit from behind, shoulder into the back, whip taken, knife ruffled through. I'm scratching through the sand and the dirt, eating it. Grab my whip back, knife gone, and these 2 boys are running away from me, teenagers, barefoot, quick in the sand. I'm trudging, I'm trying to get up to speed. Just take out the whip and I whip it out. I use a whip like a whip. Like the first guy, I used the whip and thought, oh, that's good. I used that, wrapped the leg, took the guy down, took my knife back, gave him a few punches in the back of the head, and I went on my way. But this time I was head on a swivel. So 2 or 3 days I walk into Mexico, realizing I don't really have a good plan for how to eat. It's like finding some lizards, some digging some holes at the top of a little mountain with a dried riverbed, and you dig long enough in there, you find water, it runs clean. But there were bats at night, and just flying, whizzing by me, because I was trying to sleep in that riverbed next to the water so I could just drink water and hallucinate about food, and whether I had overreacted to, the series of daddy issues and eating disorders that caused me to be fleeing into the desert. Day 3, a little boy joined me, just out of nowhere, like some kind of mestizo, vagabond. Good little kid, didn't speak any English. And he just shadowed me for a while until I finally invited him into the fire and could share water at least. And then I learned that he could hunt rabbits. So day 6 or 7, this kid is teaching me how to catch rabbits, and we're smoking those things over the fire. We're making broth out of the guts, and we're stripping them. And I'm feeling good. Day 6 or 7, I feel like I don't need the world. I don't need people. I'm going to live here. This is my mountain, my place. I stand alone. Kind of lose your mind a little bit out there sometimes. But I needed things. And I would say in day 9 or 10, it all ran together. I knew I needed things. So I staggered into a village. I came all the way around in a circle back to the river, the Rio Bravo, Rio Grande, depending on which side you're on. They call it different names. In a small town, just like you would see in a Western. You know, one street, one church, nice colors of houses. The town actually is now a ghost town, but back then it was somewhat thriving from just the river trade. There's rapids there. Santa Lina Canyon is a sheer-faced, 400-meter walls on either side. One country. You can throw a rock and hit Mexico from U.S. and vice versa. And my plan was to maybe get upstream and then rapid it down through and then get back to my car that way. Just float down the river. Oh, but I was coming in hot and messed up, bones showing, ribs, light, but also lightheaded. Little boy couldn't come into the village. He wasn't welcome, so he vanished. I walked in there, and first guy came up to the house, knocked on the door, and a guy with blue eyes opens the door. And he looks at me, and it's like we're looking into each other, like kindred spirits. Hello, my name is Jack, he says. Perfect English. Hey, Jack. And Jack invited me into the house and fed me the meal of my life. As I've said before, his cousin Zaka said in his amazing set of stories where he was wandering in the north part of Greece before he became the Minister of Justice and Education. Happiness is a domestic bird. It's right there in front of you. It's not flying in the mountains. It's actually right there in a house with food and people who love you. So Jack's wife was making this food, and his daughters, including Claudia, who became a part of my life later. He fed me. They just watched me eat as if they took joy in the process of watching it. I had nothing to give, except people are bored and they want entertainment. They want to see themselves as good. So what I was bartering with was, I was a sight to behold, a thing from nowhere, a big Viking-looking fellow who came in from the mountains and landed on their doorstep, and they had to decide, what kind of person am I, and what can I make of this? So right then and there, Jack writes down his name, his number, how to reach him, and for the next 25 years, after he deposits me over the mountain with no roads into the river, and I shoot through rapids and bang my way through, and then just kind of floats in the dreary, hot waters of the Rio Grande back to my car, and then from thence back to cities, and then to fly back. Jack became a friend. He would write me long, flowery letters. I don't know what he thought he had discovered that day, but there was a relationship that he worked on, and it was all from him. I didn't think he was really that much of a friend. I thought it was kind of bizarre. I thought he was maybe strange. But 20 or so years later, he died, and I had all these letters from him that I'd responded to just a bit. And his wife said that they wanted me to speak at the funeral. And I just went with all these letters, which I'd put into different books that somewhat related to the topics he was talking about. He was a scholar. He was a 50% German. He and his mother had fled a revolution and wound up on that border area, and then he hopscotched back and forth and ended up becoming an American citizen and dying. And I read those letters, and in those he spoke of his daughters, his wife, and life. And it was an amazing relationship in the end, one which I came to count on and admire. And it all came from this kind of meeting in the middle of nowhere. So I was thinking that there's a deal on the table, and the deal on the table is not ideal. It carves out commercial rights. It bequeaths and bestows something that South Africa thinks is a national heritage, a birthright, if you will, to a group. And their only qualification is that they've been able, in some cases, to take a thing that was worth 75-ish million and made it 300 million and close to $1 billion. But some of the unions want a different kind of deal, or they think too much is being given up. But we're walking around in the desert with no shirt. We got people who want our whip. Our knife's not going to really help against a sniper. We don't have enough calories. We've got ribs showing. We're in the heyday of a particular moment where we're winning. But what happens when it changes? Are any number of laws going to be shoved down our throat to make us lose? At the end of the day, if all the sports leagues that are worth billions are funded by private venture capital, and if there's someone who's willing to do that, and we pick the right one, why do we care whether, like in Jack and my case, that they wanted more than we wanted to give up, if we literally don't have any other options? Now, you could say there is other options, and it's probably true. I could have gone to a different door in that town, and I would have met a different person, and it wouldn't have been Jack, and I wouldn't have spoke at that funeral. Claudia wouldn't still be calling me to talk about every decision she makes in life, because her dad said, always talk to Harry before you make a big decision. Relationship in rugby is everything. That's even true with investment. There is a way the Springbok brand, the Springbok story, that intangible asset can be much bigger than it is. On a little tiny scale, look at how Siya Kolisi took his story and became one of the most outsized figures in rugby, outsized his actual playing credentials. But there's so many stories within the Springboks. The story of South Africa itself is more all-encompassing and beguiling. It's intoxicating if it's told to a wider audience. It needs to be told better. It feels like that scene in Braveheart where all the noblemen are not convinced they're going to die for freedom. They just want to make their side deals. The truth is that we need the money, and we need to do right by the money. We don't need to rue it away in some Stellenbosch chamber or Wineland. It needs to go towards public heritage and the public trust, and people need to do right. But there are people in South Africa who will do that, will do right by it. But it doesn't matter if you know about rugby. It matters if you know about market and brands and stories. Chasing the Sun 2 was such a hit smash, not because the people who made it were, deeply rugby geniuses. They weren't. Some of them came from football backgrounds or weren't that into rugby. But they recognized a scrum story when it hit them in the face. They knew that they could drive that story into the harbor of a set piece with such a long and storied history inside rugby. The very reason why rugby even exists, probably, the scrum. Sometimes an outsider can see you or your culture better than you can see yourself. And comparing this deal to some other fictitious deal that would be better, that would be offered by someone who's, more rugby and more local and has the right accent and tucks their shoes and their socks in just the right way from the school that you went to. And we've seen how that movie went already. Sometimes it's just a waif in the desert who teaches you how to kill a rabbit, or a German Mexican named Jack who gives you refuge, and then you still got to jump into a river and go through class 3 rapids, sheer walls, and hope that you find your car and make your way back. I think there's some boldness that's needed here, some truth, some transparency, and decision making. So, with caveats, have not having seen every codicil paragraph B4A little 2I, and knowing that there's always some backsheesh here and some backloading there and some under the table this way and that way, which will always be, I would err on the side of getting the money into the tent. There's always ways to get around this fear, but that's what I've learned as a fixer, is know how broke you are and how starving you are before you turn away from a deal.